Okay, so let's start. So this is gonna be like a tier list for the weapon skills of Mordheim Paramod. Alright, so first skill that we have is Anticipation. Whenever you are hit, you get a plus 3% melee resist, and it's like stacking. You can stack it as much health as you have, as long as you can survive, and it lasts for 2 turns. So with Anticipation, it starts becoming better after you get hit twice with a melee attack. Then, like, for example, a skill like a shield specialist or like awareness. I don't really rate highly like the non-master version of shield specialist and what do you call it? Awareness, I believe. But in order to make the skill work, you actually have to get hit. This skill has been used against me in the past. I've seen it used on a zombie, which had like 400 health. And that zombie was just tanking my impressive. It wasn't a very good impressive. But overall, I feel like this one is just kind of... I don't think it's bad, exactly. I think it just kind of ends up being okay overall. I think you usually can just pick up some kind of better skills than the unmastered anticipation. And you know, it's also always like arguable if 5% melee resistance right now is better than like a potential like higher number in the future. I suppose it all depends like how tanky of a character you have and how high of a health pool you have. As for the mastery, I feel like this sort of a skill is especially good on like chaos units, which have like the word zone horns mutation. And in that case, you can combine it and you don't get like 6% melee resistance whenever you are hit, but you get a total of 10% melee resistance. And this can like get completely out of control where you are just unable to hit the enemy. And you have like pretty good health modifiers also in chaos, right? So you can get hit quite a bunch. The word zone horrors are also like a great protection overall against range units, which anticipation doesn't do that, but you know, you can start stacking like the word zone horns, a range resistance and melee resistance even before like the melee combat. So I think like in combination with wordstone horns, I think this skill becomes a serious threat. I think like I would probably use this on like a chaos spawn, honestly, if your chaos spawn has like wordstone horns. So I don't know if I should put this like into not bad or good. I think this skill also maybe has like some potential on other impressives because impressives have like a high health pool overall. So maybe it could also work on somebody like the Rat Ogre, for example. Maybe even like Maiden. I'm gonna put this into not bad. As for the combat focus, I think this basically gives you plus 5% hit chance for 2 rounds. I think it's just kind of bad, because it costs like offensive points. I mean, you can do like the strategy that you set it up like 1 turn before like going in, and then on the next round make use of it 5% hit chance. The thing is, I don't really think like the 5% hit chance is all that, like, obviously like every percent matters, every percentage matters in Mordheim. And if you can like make something from 90% hit chance to 95% hit chance, like it can be a big deal. But I think you might be just kind of better off using like insult or some kind of a different skill or something like that. I don't know. I find this like really hard to put on a character. So for me, it just kind of ends up being bad because I would prefer to use this on some kind of a different unit or something. Which kind of brings me to this second. And this one gives you 10% hit chance and also gives you, it lasts for 3 rounds, so it's like much better. So I was like ready to also like put this into like kinda bad or like bad category. But I think Kitten Paw like made a pretty good point for the combat focus. And that is that with like Righteous Fury, Righteous Fury already costs SP for the sisters, and you really want to hit that. So hit that attack, not the sisters. But yeah, I can see this being used with the sisters and the Righteous Fury. Because I don't think you're gonna have like enough SP to use something like an insult or something like that. So I can see this being used with sisters basically. So I think I'm just gonna kind of put it into okay. But to be fair, I don't really use this skill to be honest, so I don't think I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the skill. I don't really use it. It doesn't seem very interesting. As for the defensive stance, defensive stance, it gives you plus 10% melee resist, and it's a stance that ends your turn. I think it just kind of ends up being like okay. I don't think this is a sort of a skill that you would use on a henchman. You would, if you want some kind of like a melee resistance tank, you would much rather use sidestep rather than this, because of like a double protection sort of a thing. So like if you fail the melee resist, then you can at least try to go for a dodge instead, you know. And it also costs like 3 SP, right, to top it off. So I think it has a very hard time competing with sidestep. There are some characters which would like to use this skill, but do not like invest a lot of points or do not have enough points for agility. But in those cases, they kind of like use the mastery version as well. So I think the skill is just kind of used. You just build it because you want to use like the mastered version. And as for the mastered version, it gives 20% melee resistance, and it's a stance, and it ends your turn. So this obviously also competes with sidestep. And I think Kitten Ball was also like talking about this, and that it's like which one is better? Is it better to have like two dodges from unmastered sidestep, or should I invest instead of 2 points into sidestep, like 6 points into this? And like melee resistance tanks have to like invest quite a bit of points into like your passives and stuff, like shield specialist, or stuff like that. Could be also like, for example, anticipation. I would use this skill, for example, on something like melee resistance warlock. I think it's definitely usable on like melee resistance warlock. And it could be also used on like some other melee resistance units. I don't think it's a bad skill, for sure. But I have a hard time putting this into like a good tier list. I think that's like the biggest problem that defensive stance has, that it has to compete with sidestep. And like they are the same cost as sidestep, so I don't know. I'm gonna put this into like not bad because it's definitely usable. It's definitely usable. Okay, Flashberry. unmastered. So I really actually like this skill. It gives you plus 15% parry chance. And the master version gives you plus 45% parry chance. So like the unmastered version, I really like using it, especially on henchmen. Well, even heroes as well. Like it's a really amazing skill for the early game. Like plus 15% chance on your parry in the early game is incredibly noticeable, and it's gonna get even better and better as you add more weapon skill, you know? Um yeah. Like I don't think there's like such a thing as like an overkill with a parry with like the unmastered version. Um it also scales nicely with the shield, you know? And it's really cheap. It's just like 100 gold. So you can kind of get it like on your melee units, and you're gonna be able to consistently tank, which is like the most important thing with stances. Um, like not to mention like parry stance is also like very good because it also allows you, if you manage to parry, it allows you to counter attack, right? So I think the skill is actually like really good because of how cheap it is, and yeah, it feels really nice, especially like in PvE. Um, if there was, for example, some kind of a level 10 PvP tournament, I don't know if this skill would be as good, because then you have like you usually sometimes go for like you might go for like different skills than flash parry that would take that spot. But I think like flash parry overall is just really good skill. As for the mastery, it's plus 45% parry chance. I think the skill is a bit of an overkill, but I don't think it's bad. Like I can see using this on like characters with a halberd, or like weeping blades, or like dual wielding characters, basically characters that do not have a shield. Or maybe like you could even use it on somebody who is using a staff. But in that case, you probably would want to use the knowledge tactics. That would be more ideal. But flash parry is like mastered. I don't think it's bad. I think it can be often like an overkill with the. It can be overkill with a shield. It definitely wouldn't be an overkill with a shield if there was some kind of a meta where everybody just breaks parry with strong blow, you know, for example. But I don't think we have that happening right now. So I think it is just skill kind of ends up being like not bad. So hamstring is actually like a pretty good skill. Basically, it's like a melee attack, and when you strike an enemy, they have -2 SP that they can use. And the mastered version for 2 rounds. And the master version is -3 SP for 3 rounds. And the mastered and unmastered version are able to stack. So if you're going to be using hamstring, you have some kind of a team that wants to be controlling like the battlefield. And like, for example, I would use this sort of a skill on a warband with a lot of range units, for example, where the point of the warband is to kite the enemy team and like make them unable to approach the enemy warband. Another thing that is also like very good with hamstring is that when you stack it with other abilities, so it could be like Kitten Paul was like using it in a tournament with the Righteous Fury and hamstring. It was like it was really brutal. I think most of my lost games were against Kitten Paw, and like this combo quite messed me up. So I think this is like is it like really good, or is it because you still have to like hit it, but it usually isn't a problem to hit it, and you only need to hit it once. Another thing, like why this skill is so useful is because you apply it in a melee combat, right? So like, for example, you approach somebody with a henchman and you strike them with this. But like, if the enemy doesn't want to fight you, they have to like disengage or run away, and then they have like a very limited amount of strategy points to get to their intended target. Often, like they're not even able to get there. Right. You can also like stack it with like a pinning shot as well. Or another thing, you could also use it with unmastered taunt. Because people in PvP, they love to disengage and run away from the combat all the time. So like if you combine hamstring with taunt, it can be like a very potent combo at like controlling the enemy and how they move around. Like also, not to mention, like it can stack with the mastery, right? Which I was talking about. I feel like I'm just gonna like put them all into good, but I think like both skills have the potential to be insane. But I haven't seen enough of hamstring, to be honest. Yeah, it can be also nice for the Skaven with their poisons. I think Valentine had like a range Skaven range Skaven team and was like suffering to play against them because the matches would go for like 2 hours or something like that. Um, yeah, I think I'm gonna like put it like this probably. I mean, if you're using hamstring, you're using it for a specific reason, and yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Like you have to use brain to use hamstring, right? Okay. The next one is hit and run, right? Yes. So I'll have to read this one because like after dealing melee damage, reduces the cost of disengage by 1 strategy point for 2 turns, and disengage cost will also be reduced by 1 offense points for the mastery version. Okay, so let's talk about like disengage first. So disengaging in the game costs, I believe, it costs 2 offensive points and 1 strategy point. So like hitting with this allows you to stop using your strategy points for disengaging. And on the mastered version, it allows you, after you hit, it allows you to disengage for just 1 offensive points. Is this easy to master? It's not even easy to master. So there are ways. There are ways to abuse this skill, and you could kind of abuse it with, what do you call it? It's like a mercenary skill, like tactician, you know, and you could like make your disengage cost absolutely nothing. In that sense, it's kind of good, but I believe you can kind of achieve the same thing by just stacking tactician, you know, and then you like don't have this issue overall, and you don't have to like invest points into hit and run. I think it's just kind of like a bit of a weird skill. Like I'm not sure how I would use it exactly. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Like hit and run in like a hit and run Skaven. I've seen people use like hit and run with the Black Skaven. With the Mighty Charge Black Skaven. Yeah, it's usable there. It's usable there because like tactician can be only used by other warbands, right? It cannot be used like by the evil warbands, by the chaos warbands, or however you call them. So that's a good point. That's actually a good point because not everybody has access to tactician. So it could be used for like some kind of like mighty charge builds. But I think like Oder just does charge builds overall better because they have the Wolf Priest, right? And Wolf Priest can have some crazy combos. I don't know, is this just like, it's not like, I'm just gonna like put it probably to bed. Yeah, I just don't really see a point of the skill. And this one, I mean, if I put this skill into OK, I think I'm just gonna like kind of like put it at like the top of OK, I guess. Yeah. Oh, next one. Jaw Strike. Oh, yeah. So Jaw Strike is kind of busted. It gives you like minus 15% chance to cast if you hit the enemy, or it gives you and it gives you like plus 15% like trigger for the Tzeentch curse or like the divine wrath or however it's called. Oh, and as a bonus, it also like disables all of the leadership skills. And I think this is just kind of like the worst thing that was added in the bot for the Jaw Strike. That like the leadership part, that you're like completely disabled from using like your leadership skills. And like just to give you an example, like I was in like a deployment where I had a captain, and my captain was like a purely order leader. That's all he was doing. He was just ordering around people. So like in the first round, I just had like a random warrior come up to me and then jaw strike me. And then like my captain just could not do anything. He was like completely useless. And I think like this sort of a hard counter to like leadership skills. I mean, like the poor leaders, the poor order leaders, they cannot even like use their ability. Like I don't know what order leader can even do when they don't have order, you know? So I think this sort of a hard counter shouldn't exist, in my opinion, on like Jaw Strike. It's like really good. I think you can definitely use it on like more supportive henchmen, you know, because like spellcasting is obviously like really deadly. But yeah. So should it be a cost increase debuff on leadership skills instead? Yeah, I think that would be like something much healthier, you know? Like make like the leadership skills cost more SP or more offensive points or something like that. Because right now it's a bit ass. Yeah, like maybe some kind of like associated SP cost, like additional SP cost. I think that would kind of make sense, in my opinion, and I think it would be like more healthy. Okay. As for the master version, I think it's still like pretty good. It basically gives to the caster minus 30% chance to hit, and it gives them like plus 30% like Tzeentch curse and like the divine thing chance to trigger. So I think the skill still ends up being kind of good. You can still like stack it even like with the unmastered version, but I kind of like taking this sort of a skill on at least one character where you are not investing, or you have a hard time investing into magic resistance whatsoever. So I think I would, yeah, like I think this skill is kind of for mercs, because mercs usually don't invest into magic resistance. They don't really have like any magic resistance skills. So I think it's, I think it would be fair to just put it into like not bad. It's definitely like good in my opinion. Yeah, I think it's kind of good actually. Okay, next one is Onslaught. Onslaught is actually like pretty good skill. Um, so like for 3 offensive points and 1 SP, you enter like an ambush, which is like Onslaught, and when you strike somebody, you have like a parry afterwards. It's pretty nice actually. I kind of like using it on Skaven. But I also kind of like using like Prowl on Skaven, so it just kind of like depends if you go like for Prowl or if you go for Onslaught. Like the strength toughness characters prefer like the Onslaught, because they usually also invest into weapon skill, right? So I think it's just like a good skill overall. As for the mastery, I think the mastery is actually like a really good skill, because you have plus 30% crit chance. I usually talk about like how ambushes are bad, because you don't want to like over invest your points into ambushes, and you also like want to focus on other areas than just trying to ambush an opponent. But I feel like this sort of a skill is like the perfect amount that you need for like ambushing somebody. Like that plus 30% crit chance can be really, really, really huge. So yeah, it's kind of awesome. Like if you ambush somebody and you crit them and they get stunned, the character is probably just going to die. And you would use this on like, ideally you would probably use this on like some kind of a damage dealing, for example like halberd or like weeping blades, or like dual wielding. My favorite is like dual wielding dagger and sword on Skaven, and you can achieve something like 80% crit chance. You know, that's really rough. It hits you like a truck, kind of. Oh, and another thing why the skill is really, really good is because it also reduces the cost of offensive points. So this is really good, because what you can do is like, imagine that you have like weeping blades or like some kind of a two-handed weapon, or some kind of a um not two-handed weapon, but like dual wielding, right? When you strike with your first strike, it costs 2 offensive points. When you strike with your second strike, it costs 3 offensive points. When you disengage for 2 offensive points and 1 strategy points, you start running away. But you cannot do ambush, because ambush is affected by that debuff from the two-handed weapons. So ambush in that case costs 4 offensive points. But like the onslaught is not affected by it. Like the cost overrides the the cost is overwritten basically. So what you can do is like strike somebody, then strike again, then you can disengage, and then you can like run away somewhere and hide. And you can you can run away somewhere and hide and set up an onslaught mastery, right? And that's in total 9 offensive points. And this sort of like hit and run tactics can be like very effective and hard to deal with for the opponent. So I think like onslaught mastery is like really good. Retaliation. So the unmastered version Basically, whenever you do a counter strike, you have a 40% chance to receive 2 offensive points back. No, sorry. I'm talking out of my ass. Different skill. Retaliation is whenever you hit, it increases your chance to hit counter attack by 20%, and then master version increases the chance to 40%, and it's easy to master. So I think this skill is actually kind of good. It's definitely like not bad. I can see this being used in like conjunction with counter blow. I think it would be ideally used with counter blow, but I just don't think like counter blow builds have enough. What do you call it? They don't have enough passive slots to properly have all the skills that they want to use. Yeah. Also, you kind of like using this skill with, what do you call it? With Swift Counter. Like I've used this on like a Red Ogre, and there's like a Red Ogre build which is able to infinitely counter strike. So it's like really good in that sense as well. Like, but 20% like hit chance can be nice. So I think I'm gonna like put this into it's definitely like not bad. It's definitely like not bad. As for the mastery, it's easy to master, so that's quite nice. You would go for this sort of a skill, I think, only if you have like some free slots to use, right? And here's the thing, like I don't know if it's even like good to use, because for this to have the skill, you need 12 weapon skill. Yeah. For this, you need like 12 weapon skill. And with 12 weapon skill and plus 20% chance to hit back, that's already like 44% chance to hit. It might be like an overkill at like 12 weapon skill already, like this 40% hit chance. I don't know, like I would probably just go for it if I have some points or something, but otherwise I wouldn't really bother with it. I think we can just kind of like put this at the end of not bad. Maybe I also like put like the combat focus like a bit higher as well. I feel like it shouldn't be in the same place with this. Yeah. Shield Specialist. So Shield Specialist gives you plus 5% melee resistance and plus 5% parry. So with Shield Specialist, you usually don't care about the parry whatsoever. You kind of care about the melee resistance. It's also like the requirements for this are really cheap. So it's like 3 weapon skill and 9 weapon skill, and it's really nice. It is usable on like some of the henchmen, on like melee resistance henchmen who don't want to get hit. Like you could, for example, use this on something like a Dark Soul, but I think Dark Souls are kind of better off going for a full damage overall. I think it's just kind of like, it's not bad. Like I don't think this is bad, but I think there are like better options, especially for like melee resistance henchmen tanks. I would probably use like if I was making like a melee resistance henchman tank, I would probably rather use Serenity than this. but it's not bad. I don't know. I think it just kind of ends up being okay, to be honest. It's like the top of okay. Yeah, I think this like looks a bit better. Oh, as for this one, is this one is actually like really freaking good because it gives you plus 15% melee resistance. So this skill is amazing for melee resistance tanks because the requirements for it are almost non-existent. It's just like 9 weapon skill, so it's also like really cheap. And I think this skill is kind of like the core. Um, yeah, I think this is kind of like a core for melee resistance tanks. I think you probably go this skill on every single melee resistance tank. And this can be like also like very good on like casters such as Warlock, like melee resistance Warlock caster, or it could be like good on melee resistance Eshin Sork caster, you know, like melee resistance tanks basically. The question is if I like want to put this into like God tier or insane. You can also use this sort of a skill on like parry tanks, but I like with parry tanks you would prefer to just actually parry the attack and then like counter strike, you know? So I'm just gonna like put this into, is this God tier skill? I think it is like a God tier skill specifically for melee resistance tanks. Yeah, I think it is kind of like a God tier skill. But I don't know, is this like a fair treatment of the skill? Because I put like Daredevil like lower because I was like also thinking about. I'm just gonna like put this into insane because the skill is just, yeah. It's like the numbers are so amazing, right? And it's so easy to pick up. It's so easy to pick up. Let's just continue with the Swift counter. Okay, so the unmastered version is, it has like a 40% chance whenever you counterattack, you get back 2 offensive points. And with the master version, whenever you counterattack, you have an 80% chance to gain 2 offensive points. So this skill, I kind of don't like it. Let's start with the unmastered version. Like, I don't think it's exactly bad, but like you would rather just invest into some kind of a skill which is gonna be like much more consistent overall, or you would, if you really want to counter strike with your attacks and be able to counter strike, you would prefer like investing into an enchantment which gives you 2 offensive points back whenever you parry, you know, or like 2 offensive points whenever you dodge. And I think that's just like a much better solution because the enchantment gives you an 80% chance to do this. Uh, like at 40%, I don't think this sort of a skill should exist in this state. I think this sort of a skill should be also like something like 80% chance, or like, yeah, like 80% chance, but just make it give like less offensive points, like 1 offensive point or something like that, so that, yeah, because I don't know, you're just playing like casino with like the 40% chance, and it's also like kind of like awkward with like how you use it, because, well, I'll put this one to just kind of bad. Because like the 40% chance, it's very easy to drop that counter attack. As for the mastery, I personally don't like the skill because of that 80% chance. It can feel like really bad when you set up like your fighter with like one offensive point. He gets to parry, he counterattacks, and he doesn't get back that offensive point. I think in that sense it kind of sucks. But yeah, I think it's also preferable if you just use that enchantment, which gives you 80% chance to give you back like 2 offensive points. But this can be like a really good skill. This can be really good skill on like what do you call them? Like impressives and stuff like that, where they deal a huge amount of damage. Like you can use this on like I was saying, like Red Ogre, right? And when you combine it with an enchantment that like whenever you are hit with a melee attack, I believe, you have a 90% chance to get back 1 offensive point. So in that sense, you kind of make it consistent, and you consistently hit back, you know, and that's like the defense for your impressive. Whenever you get hit, you threaten to kill the enemy target, right? And I had also like a kind of a close call during the tournament when I was fighting Lias's ogre, which has this mastered, and he also has mastered the retaliation. Yeah, he also has mastered retaliation. So whenever my ogre was attacking his ogre, I would take a lot of damage, you know, and like my ogre almost died trying to kill that ogre. So I think the skill is kind of good. I think it's kind of good, but I don't like using it for 2 reasons. Because I don't like having any leftover offensive points on my characters. I just like using, I like spending all of them at once. And the other reason is that 80% hit chance. It feels really bad when you drop your counterattack at like at that 20% and you get punished for it. So yeah. Oh, and the last skill, Web of Steel, which is like one of my favorite skills in the game. So this one costs it's like 9 weapon skill to 15 weapon skill, and the yeah. Basically, this gives you like 2 parry chances, and this one gives you 3 parry chances. And I think like both of them are like really good. Like Web of Steel is so much better than Sidestep because of the natural progression of the character. With a Web of Steel, character, what you want to invest into, because it's a melee character, you want to invest into toughness, so you don't have to like share it with agility like Sidestep. You invest into leadership so that you have like higher terror resistance, so that you don't drop your parry. And lastly, also you have the weapon skill, right? Because with a melee character, like that's like the first thing you usually invest your points into. And yeah, I think it's just really good. Like even the price is 300, but it's like totally fine. I think it's like one of the first skills I invest like proper money into henchmen, like when I want to keep them around. So I think the skill is, I think it's kind of easily got tier. As for the mastery, I think mastery is also like just really amazing. I think I think it's worth like investing those 4 additional points to the mastery. So yeah, I think it's just worth it. Like it can be quite a difference maker, and also like Web of Steel also allows you in PvEs it allows you to set up scenarios where you're able to more or less infinitely parry the enemy and like block them, and so that you're able to loot the entire map in the meantime. It's a really great stalling tool in PvE, and it's also like really great in PvP. And yeah, this one, oh, I cannot like put it anymore back down. Oh well. Yeah, I would also like put this into like God tier, to be honest. I think like that one additional parry is often a difference maker. Like I was going against Tarrant Skaven as an example, and he had like Web of Steel mastery. When I saw that he had like Web of Steel mastery, I started sweating because I had like no idea how I was gonna go through all those heroes with Web of Steel mastery. I think this is like really freaking good stance. So yeah, I guess that's it for like the weapon skill.